Some movies don't just entertain, they rewire something inside you. Top Gun hit theaters in 1986 and didn't just tell a story about fighter pilots, it created a feeling. Raw speed, impossible cool, the terrifying thrill of flying at the edge of what machines and human bodies could handle. Today we're going behind the cockpit for 15 revelations that will completely change how you see this film, plus one jaw-dropping bonus at the end that almost nobody talks about. The list starts right now. Number 1, a magazine article that started it all before. There was a script or a director before Tom Cruise ever put on a pair of aviator sunglasses. There was a magazine article. In May 1983, journalist Ehud Yoni published a piece in California Magazine titled Top Guns. It profiled real Navy pilots training at Miramar, capturing the competition, the camaraderie, and the sheer intensity of flying F-14 Tomcats to their limits. Lieutenant Commander Charles Heatley's photographs showed jets slashing through desert skies at impossible angles. It read less like journalism and more like a film that hadn't been made yet. Producers Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer purchased the rights within 2 months. Getting the film made took years longer. David Cronenberg passed. John Carpenter passed. Eventually, screenwriter Jack Epps Jr. attended declassified sessions at Miramar and strapped into an F-14 himself to feel what a high G-turn actually does to a body. That research gave the screenplay its authenticity. The film acknowledged its debt in the end credits, inspired by an article in California Magazine. Decades later, the article created legal waves again when Yoni's widow and son sued over Top Gun Maverick, a case the court ultimately dismissed. But the foundation was always that one piece of journalism. Number 2, renting real jets. Cost a fortune. The U.S. government spent roughly $38 million building each F-14 Tomcat. Paramount got access to a whole fleet for less than the price of one. The studio paid the Navy about $7,600 per flight hour per jet, totaling around $1.8 million over the production. On a $15 million budget, that meant over 10% went straight to the Pentagon. What they got in return was irreplaceable. Real launches, real arrested landings, real afterburner climbs over real ocean. In the mid-1980s, with CGI still in its infancy, there was no substitute. But the most extraordinary financial moment didn't appear in any official budget. Filming aboard the USS Enterprise, Tony Scott fell in love with the golden hour light hitting the flight deck. When the ship turned and the angle vanished, Scott asked if the captain could adjust course to recapture it. The answer came back as a number, $25,000. The estimated fuel and planning cost to change heading. Scott paid it himself, not the studio, him. Because when the world offers you that image, you don't negotiate, you pay. That combination of military access at scale and one director's personal obsession is a huge part of why Top Gun looks the way it does. If you are enjoying this, take 2 seconds and leave a like. Subscribe if you want more videos like this. That support really motivates my work and helps a lot with bringing more content. Number 3, most cockpit close-ups were shot on a gimbal. Top Gun sells the sensation of flight with every close-up. Sweat on foreheads, tendons pulling tight in necks, eyes tracking invisible threats. Most viewers assume those shots came from cameras crammed into real F-14 cockpits mid-maneuver. They didn't. The problem was sound. Jet engines at full power produce over 140 decibels. Even with specialized microphones, the audio was completely unusable. So Tony Scott made a decision that defined the film's visual approach. He separated the feeling from the filming. For every cockpit close-up, the crew built a meticulously accurate F-14 replica on a hydraulic gimbal inside a hangar behind Burbank Airport. Rear projection screens showed sky and horizon footage. Crew members sprayed actors with water to simulate sweat. Strobe lights suggested changing conditions. The cast wasn't actually pulling Gs. They were drawing on the memory of what those forces felt like on the real flights. The exterior aerials came from cameras mounted on a Learjet and an A-7 Intruder, with actual Navy pilots flying the Tomcats. The finished film weaves both worlds so seamlessly that most viewers never notice. Number 4. The volleyball scene. Almost got cut. The beach volleyball sequence advances nothing. No mission is planned, no orders are given, no plot moves forward. By any traditional screenwriting standard, it's completely unnecessary, and it became one of the most iconic scenes in Hollywood history. Tony Scott shot it like a commercial, which made sense, coming from the world of high-end advertising. He timed every shot around golden hour, used spray bottles and mineral oil between takes, and crafted 60 seconds designed to look completely effortless. When Paramount executives saw the footage, they pushed to cut it. Too expensive, too long, no narrative purpose. Scott refused. He argued that audiences needed to see these men outside their uniforms, without rank, without cockpits, without the weight of the program. The game translated the Maverick-Iceman rivalry into purely physical terms, just competition, bodies, sun. He was right. Decades of parodies later, from comedies to other action films, what executives called filler became one of the most enduring visual signatures of the entire decade. Number 5. Ray-Ban aviators made a comeback. By the mid-1980s, Ray-Ban aviators were in trouble. Once standard military issue, they'd slipped into dad accessory territory. Annual sales hovered around 18,000 pairs. Then Tom Cruise put them on. Maverick's gold-rimmed aviators weren't just a costume choice. They became an extension of character. On a man who raced his motorcycle alongside jet takeoffs and flew inverted just to take a Polaroid, those frames looked untouchable. But here's the thing, they were also instantly accessible. Anyone could buy a pair. You couldn't fly an F-14, but you could look like you might. Within 7 months of the film's release, aviator sales jumped roughly 40%. Mall optical shops filled with people trying on mirrored lenses. By the end of the decade, Ray-Ban had sold millions of additional pairs. A brand revival built on one character's look in one film. The effect was so direct that it's studied in marketing courses today. Product placement works when the product feels authentic to the character wearing it. Maverick and those glasses were inseparable. And when Top Gun, Maverick reignited the story in 2022, another sales spike followed. A piece of military equipment, reframed by cinema twice across 4 decades, became a permanent symbol of cool. Number 6. The soundtrack nearly fell apart. The Top Gun soundtrack sat atop the Billboard 200 for 5 non-consecutive weeks and moved over 9 million copies. Danger Zone and Take My Breath Away felt like they were always meant to be in this film. But the road to that album was one near disaster after another. Danger Zone circulated widely before anyone took it. Jefferson Starship passed over pro-military concerns. Toto hit legal snags. Bryan Adams refused, worried the movie glorified war. REO Speedwagon's Kevin Cronin found the melody too high. By the time producers approached Kenny Loggins, options were running thin. Loggins grabbed it immediately and recorded it fast. The result missed number 1 only because of Peter Gabriel's Sledgehammer, but became one of the defining rock tracks of the decade. Take My Breath Away had its own turbulence. Composer Giorgio Moroder hoped Berlin would choose his up-tempo rocker instead of the ballad. Bassist John Crawford resisted hard. The song didn't match the band's identity. The label overruled him. Vocalist Terry Nunn recorded it. The single hit number 1 worldwide, won both an Academy Award and a Golden Globe. But the internal tensions contributed to Berlin breaking up less than a year later. One song that nearly tore a band apart became the most awarded music of 1986. 2 tracks stitched from rejection and reluctance helped make Top Gun as much a musical landmark as a cinematic one. Number 7. Maverick's motorcycle was breaking records. When Maverick races his motorcycle alongside an F-14 on the runway, it's pure metaphor. One man, one machine, daring to keep pace with something designed for the sky. But that motorcycle was no prop. It was the Kawasaki GPZ 900R, the original Ninja, released in 1984 as the first production bike to break 150 miles per hour. 16 valves, liquid cooling, an inline-4 engine. In the mid-1980s, this was as close as a civilian could get to fighter jet velocity on 2 wheels. And here's the wild part. Tom Cruise had never ridden a motorcycle before Top Gun. He learned the basics in a parking lot just before filming. Then he was out there shooting high-speed runs without a helmet, leaning into curves feet from active jet traffic. The deal to put those bikes on screen had its own drama. Producers asked Kawasaki for 3 bikes at no cost, promising the exposure. Kawasaki, burned before by unreturned loaners, countered with dealer cost. When producers threatened to call Honda, Kawasaki's marketing director pulled out Honda's phone number and handed it over. The production bought their GPZ 900Rs from a San Diego dealer anyway. Tank badges came off, Ninja decals stayed. Anyone who knew bikes recognized them instantly. That single runway sequence, one affordable motorcycle racing a 38 their $38 million jet, captured a spirit that went far beyond the Navy. Number 8, Val Kilmer. Tried to avoid the film. One of Top Gun's most iconic performances almost didn't happen, because the actor was actively trying to prevent it. Val Kilmer didn't want to be in Top Gun. He found the script lacking and had real reservations about the film's cheerleading for military aggression. He would have walked away without a second thought. There was one problem. He was under contract to Paramount for a 3-picture deal. He couldn't refuse the audition, but he could tank it. He showed up in oversized green Australian shorts and delivered his lines with minimum energy. A deliberate underperformance designed to communicate he wasn't the right choice. Paramount cast him anyway. On set, Kilmer channeled his resistance into Iceman and kept real distance from Cruise. The cast informally split, Maverick and Goose on one side, Iceman and his wingman on the other. That division sharpened every shared scene. With very little on the page beyond ace pilot and rival, Kilmer constructed a full backstory. A distant father. Pathological perfectionism. Zero tolerance for ego-driven risk. He added unforgettable physical details. The jaw clench, the unblinking stare, the dismissive bite of teeth that became iconic. By the time filming wrapped, Tony Scott's vision had won him over. When Maverick entered development decades later, Kilmer didn't wait for an invitation. He campaigned to return. Before we keep going, subscribe if you haven't yet. Drop a comment telling me which movie or show you want me to cover next, with strange behind-the-scenes facts. I read every single one. Number 9. The enemy MiG-28 was actually American. In Top Gun's final act, the F-14s square off against sleek black jets with red stars on their tails. Aviation enthusiasts spotted the problem immediately. The MiG-28 doesn't exist. It never has. The aircraft playing the enemy were Northrop F-5 Tiger IIs, American-made jets the Navy already used as adversary aircraft at the real Top Gun program. Instructors painted them in foreign-style schemes and flew them to simulate enemy tactics in training. The film simply extended that practice. Matte black paint, red insignia, a fictional designation. Anyone familiar with Soviet aviation history would also catch the wink. Real MiGs carry odd numbers. MiG-15, MiG-21, MiG-23, MiG-29. MiG-28, for anyone paying attention, was the tell. The film also never names the opposing country. No flag, no government. Just the other side defined by a red star in a Cold War context. That vagueness was smart. By keeping the threat generic, the dogfights became contests of pure skill rather than explicit political allegory. The most fictional aircraft in the movie reflected a completely real training practice. The lies were borrowed from the truth. Number 10. That inverted shot was aerodynamic fantasy. There's one image from Top Gun that everyone remembers, even if they can't name another scene. Maverick's F-14 inverted above a MiG, canopies nearly touching. Goose snapping a Polaroid, Maverick offering a rude hand gesture to the opposing pilot. For real naval aviators, it's pure fiction. The F-14's twin vertical stabilizers would physically collide with any aircraft directly below in that position. The aerodynamic turbulence between two jets in such tight opposing formation would be wildly dangerous. And fuel systems on inverted fighters don't support sustained upside-down flight. Holding that position long enough to have a conversation and take a photograph would risk a flameout. The production created the moment with carefully constructed sleight of hand. The F-5s playing the MiGs flew alongside a camera-equipped Learjet. Their pilots reacted as though something startling hung above them. The inverted Tomcat was composited in afterward, one of the film's very few visual effects shots. The dialogue about a 4G negative dive adds another layer of unreality. None of that matters on screen. Tony Scott wasn't instructing pilots. He was engraving an emotion, audacity, irreverence, the absolute refusal to be impressed. He succeeded so completely that for millions of viewers, that single impossible image is Top Gun. Number 11. The love scene was added months later. Take My Breath Away playing over a blue-tinted bedroom scene and a charged elevator conversation. Both feel like the emotional spine of Maverick and Charlie's story. They feel inevitable, like they were in the first draft. They weren't. They almost didn't exist. The original cut kept Maverick and Charlie's connection diffuse. Classroom tension and brief conversations rather than a dedicated romantic set piece. A crucial test screening in Chicago produced clear feedback. Exhibitors wanted a stronger love story. The problem was that principal photography had ended months earlier. Cruise was filming The Color of Money in Chicago under Scorsese. McGillis had dyed her hair dark brown. Tony Scott flew to Chicago and personally asked Scorsese for a single day, permission granted. McGillis wore a baseball cap in the elevator scene to hide her new hair color. Cruise appeared wet-haired in the love scene. Damp hair lay closer to how it looked during original photography. The blue light and silhouettes weren't purely artistic choices. They were practical camouflage. A logistical scramble carefully disguised as stylistic intention produced one of the film's most remembered sequences. Number 12. The bar scenes. Gave pilots a human face. Top Gun's most famous moments don't all involve afterburners. 2 bar sequences gave the film its deepest emotional texture. And both worked because they showed the audience who these men were when the hardware was parked. In the first, Maverick decides the best way to introduce himself to Charlie is to perform You've Lost That Lovin' Feelin' at full volume across a crowded officers' club. One by one, the other aviators join in. Reckless, corny, completely committed. It's one of the most charming romantic introductions in any film of that era precisely because it's so unhinged. Later, at Kansas City Barbecue, a real San Diego restaurant, Goose pounds out Great Balls of Fire on a piano, while Meg Ryan's Carol laughs beside him. The bar sings along. For a few minutes, the weight of the program lifts completely. What those scenes accomplish is something the cockpit sequences structurally can't. They show friendships that predated the film, marriages that feel genuinely real, habits developed over years. They make Goose human in a way that ensures, when tragedy arrives, the loss lands with actual weight. Kansas City Barbecue still exists. The sing-along still happens. Some performances outlast the film reels they were captured on. Number 13. The sequel earned. What the original never did. When Top Gun hit in 1986, it dominated the box office, but earned a complicated critical reception. Reviewers praised the spectacle. Others dismissed it as thin on substance and heavy on military cheerleading. Awards bodies ignored it outside the music categories. The Oscars gave it nothing except Best Original Song. For a film that culturally dominant, that was a pointed omission. Top Gun Maverick, arriving 36 years later, rewrote that story completely. It earned a 96% on Rotten Tomatoes, grossed nearly $1.5 billion worldwide, and became the highest-grossing film of Tom Cruise's career. It received 6 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture, a rare honor for a high-octane action sequel. At Cannes, Cruise received a prolonged standing ovation and an honorary Palme d'Or. The most conspicuous note of the season was what didn't happen. Despite anchoring both films and performing many of his own sequences in real FA-18s, Cruise received no Best Actor nomination. He wasn't at the ceremony. He was filming Mission Impossible in the UK. His absence became its own kind of statement about a career built on forward motion rather than validation. The sequel gave Top Gun the critical legacy the original never received, without losing a single frame of the popcorn joy that made the first film beloved. Quick reminder to subscribe if you are enjoying these revelations, and tell me in the comments, do you know any strange fact about this movie that I didn't mention? Let's build the list together. Number 14. The Navy's most effective recruitment tool. Top Gun's relationship with the military didn't start when cameras rolled. It started in development. The Navy reviewed the script and requested changes. A carrier deck crash became a training accident. Maverick's love interest, originally an enlisted service member, was rewritten as a civilian contractor to sidestep fraternization issues. The opening dogfight moved from Cuban airspace to international waters. Every edit pushed the film away from war story and toward sports drama at altitude. Training, rivalry, setbacks, redemption, hardware presented as aspirational rather than haunting. Recruiters understood immediately what they had. Navy information tables appeared in theater lobbies on opening weekend. Stories of a 500% surge in applications circulated widely. Official numbers were more modest. Overall Navy enlistment rose about 8% that year. But Lieutenant Commander Laura Marlowe, covering parts of Arizona and San Diego, told reporters that roughly 90% of new aviation applicants in her area had seen the film. A Department of Defense database later credited Top Gun with helping rehabilitate the military's public image after Vietnam. That wasn't an accident. It was the product of a studio and the Navy working toward the same goal from the very first draft. Number 15. A cameraman lost his life for the film. Top Gun's aerial sequences carry a shadow most viewers never see. Acknowledged in 4 quiet words near the end of the credits. Art Scholl was a legend before this film existed. He'd won national aerobatic championships, performed at air shows worldwide, and contributed footage to The Right Stuff, Blue Thunder, and Indiana Jones, and The Temple of Doom. For Top Gun, the production needed footage of an aircraft in a flat spin, the uncontrolled tumbling descent that kills Goose in the film. They turned to Scholl. On September 16, 1985, off the coast near Carlsbad, California, he took his Pitts S-2 biplane aloft with camera equipment mounted to capture the maneuver. He entered the spin at around 4,000 feet. Observers heard him over the radio. At 3,000 feet, a problem. At 1,500 feet, a worse one. Moments later, the aircraft hit the Pacific Ocean. Neither Scholl nor the plane were ever recovered. The precise cause remains uncertain. Possibly the camera equipment shifted the aircraft's balance. Possibly control failure. Possibly spatial disorientation. In the finished film, after Maverick and Goose's jet enters its unrecoverable spin, the end credits carry a simple, quiet dedication to Art Scholl. The aerial sequences that take your breath away owe something to a man who gave his life chasing the perfect shot. Almost at the end, and the best is still coming. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next, and drop your city or country in the comments. I want to see how far this video is reaching. Bonus: the real pilot who became a NASA astronaut. Here's the one almost nobody talks about. The aerial sequences in Top Gun were flown by actual Navy pilots. Not actors, not stunt doubles. And one of them had a future that makes Maverick's career look modest. His name is Scott Altman. He flew the Buzzing the Tower run, the low, aggressive pass past the Miramar control building, 9 separate times to get the right angle. And when Maverick flies inverted over the MiG and offers that famous hand gesture, the hand in the frame is Scott Altman's hand. After Top Gun, Altman applied to NASA and was accepted. Between 1994 and 2009, he flew 4 space shuttle missions and logged over 51 days in space, commanding 2 Hubble Space Telescope servicing missions. The same hands that buzzed the Miramar Tower later performed spacewalks to repair a telescope that changed our understanding of the universe. You watched a future NASA commander flip off a fictional enemy pilot in a 1986 movie theater. And you never knew. That's the kind of detail that makes cinema feel genuinely magical. The next time you watch Top Gun, just remember, one of those pilots was headed somewhere even Maverick never got to go. And those were 15 strange facts about Top Gun, plus one bonus that most people have never heard. This film is more than a snapshot of the 1980s. It's a case study in what happens when every department, the director, the cast, the crew, the military, and even a few reluctant musicians, goes all in on the same idea at the same time. The result outlasted every trend it was born from. If you made it this far, leave a like, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me which fact surprised you the most. And don't forget to suggest another movie that deserves this kind of deep dive. See you in the next video.